Yup, I made that video 3.5 years ago. But back then, I didn't care much about my YouTube channel, so that video was just a slideshow. Still images, no gameplay footage, no me, no narration, not even my voice, nothing. Just a simple, mediocre slideshow, and I also included some Super Famicom games. So it was just a mess. But today, I am here to remake that top 10 the good way, the right way, to show it to you guys. The 10 best JRPGs for the Super Nintendo, in my opinion, and I can say that because I have now officially played every single North American release of JRPGs on the Super Nintendo. So these are what I consider the best, or most likely my personal favorites, for the Super Nintendo. So let's begin! Number 10. Brain Lord. Brain Lord is an action RPG where you play as this hunter who looks like a fat dude, but he's not, in an overview setting. It's a quest-driven game where you talk to people, mostly at the pub, and you get a job to complete, most likely in dungeons. Now, Brain Lord might be a little generic in terms of story and overall gameplay, but it's my number 10 for two big reasons. One, the music. The soundtrack this game has is excellent, especially this town's theme. The second reason being that back then, most action RPGs were filled with puzzles, and Brain Lord was no exception. But there's just something about this game that makes these puzzles so interesting, not unique, but annoyingly addictive. It's just so much fun to play than others, and swinging your sword here just feels so good. Number 9. Soul Blazer. Allegedly, this game belongs to a trilogy called Gaia, which includes famous RPG Illusion of Gaia, and also Terranigma, a game that was only released in Japan and Europe. Now, those two games were awesome, and as far as I'm concerned, they could very well take this place instead, so consider them as honorable mentions, since they're both great. However, Soul Blazer is the one I play the most, and there's just something really addicting in the gameplay here, not only in its puzzles but in the goal of the game, which is to restore the town and its people through an action-packed playthrough. This game has so much charisma in that regard that it literally made me choose it over the other two games from the Gaia trilogy. So if you haven't played it, I strongly suggest you do. Number 8. Ogre Battle: March of the Black Queen. This is a real-time strategy RPG where you start a campaign in a war, managing an entire army by yourself. On the overall maps, you select the leaders and their platoons to move to cities or castles to conquer them. Since the main goal is to conquer the main castle, this usually helps you in your journey. Whenever you encounter an enemy, it goes into a turn-based battle with isometric view that you cannot control. Your allies fight by themselves according to the kind of mode you set them on before, so they can fend off the enemy. After a couple of turns, regardless of who won, these battles will end. And that's basically it. Ogre Battle is a very substantial franchise that left a giant impact in the RPG industry because of its originality. It's very underrated and underappreciated. And on a side note, this game was later ported to the PS1 and the Sega Saturn, also on the Wii Virtual Console. So check it out if you can. Number 7. Secret of Mana. There's really no need to explain anything about this fantastic classic, recently remade for the PS4. But since this list is full of classics, might as well do it. It's a very charming action RPG with a very interesting battle system that was kind of unique for its time back in the early 90s. There's a percentage timing in which you have to fight. Whenever it reaches 100, it's time to attack if you want to cause decent damage to your enemies. The story is your classic chosen protagonist that finds the legendary Sword of Mana and goes into a quest to save the world with it. Of course, there's much more than that, but you already know that. And if you don't, well, I don't want to spoil anything, so you might as well go play it yourself, since this all-time classic is a must. Very good game with a lot of charisma. Number 6. Breath of Fire. Breath of Fire is a game that would be very generic if it was released today, but back then it was awesome. Not innovative, not unique, no. Just very simple. So simple, it's actually very good. Besides, your character could transform into a dragon to fight, so yep, another very charming RPG. As you can see, it's got a very simple and classic turn-based battle system, also with a nice, well-told story, decent music and graphics from the 16-bit era. This was Capcom's first turn-based RPG, and it's part of a franchise that's very important, historically speaking, that died a few years ago. I already made a video about that, called What the Hell Happened to Breath of Fire, in case you want to check it out. This game might be generic for some people and probably one of the worst in the series, but not for me. I thought it was great, better than Secret of Mana, and yes, better than its sequel. But I'll explain that at the end of this video. Number 5. Final Fantasy II. We all know that this is, in reality, Final Fantasy IV. It's just we never got the previous two for the NES until much later, so they left it as Final Fantasy II for us. So what can I say? It's yet another all-time classic that has been ported and remade for everything! However, there have been some problems over time within each version, including the original one for the SNES, so every single one of them is unique in its own way. For example, the PS1 and the Nintendo DS versions are harder than this one. There's also one for the PSP which includes a sequel called The After Years. So this game might be a franchise of its own! In any case, it was one of the first Final Fantasy classics we played back in the golden age of JRPGs, and one of the first to include a very dark, mature story, unlike most RPGs back then. This game might not be the best Final Fantasy ever made, but it definitely is one great classic. Number 4. Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistrals. God, it was so hard to choose between this one and the next game because, in my opinion, they're both as good. Lufia 2 is the prequel to the original Lufia, also released for the Super Nintendo, and it's far, far superior in every single way. Once more, a turn-based RPG, but with very unique and original aspects. First, the monster sprites were bigger, especially bosses, something that looked really cool back then. Also, the story is once again what I could consider as mature and not childish, even though it does have some silly moments. The soundtrack is excellent as well as the graphics. You know, it's not exactly a masterpiece, but it's damn well near being one. And it's also a very underrated game that belongs to a franchise that is also dead nowadays. So sad, since this is one of the greatest Super Nintendo RPGs of all time. Number 3. Chrono Trigger. I know it is considered as the best JRPG ever, or at least for the Super Nintendo, but I obviously disagree. That doesn't mean, however, that the game isn't great. It's awesome! It was a very revolutionary RPG back in the day, another Squaresoft classic, and a favorite to millions of RP gamers out there in the world nowadays. Also ported to the PS1 and the Nintendo DS, the latter being allegedly the best version. Either way, Trigger is an excellent RPG with its legendary story of time and space travel, letting you visit worlds from the long-forgotten past to the mysterious science fiction future. The music here, oh man, it's one of the greatest soundtracks of all time in the history of video games. seriously. If you haven't played already this game before, as you probably should have, at least reconsider and play it to have an opinion of your own. Number 2. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. I'm not saying it's better than Trigger, I just like it a whole lot more. Several playthroughs made me realize that I love this game, considering it is one of the first RPGs I ever played in my life. Probably the second one, as a matter of fact. It's also a game we're all familiar with nowadays, included in the mini SNES Classic, a great addition to it. It was Nintendo's first attempt to make an RPG based on the Super Mario franchise, and with the help of the legendary Squaresoft, they nailed it. They created an all-time classic and a personal favorite to many. It's a great game with lots of charm and charisma. A very fun turn-based battle system and a very addictive gameplay with a fair challenge. Whether you're a fan of Super Mario or not, if you like RPGs, you can't keep missing this game. Do yourself a favor and go play this masterpiece right now. And number 1, Final Fantasy III. Of course, Final Fantasy 3 or 6 just had to top the list. I'm not exactly a fanboy, but I really think it's the best RPG for the Super Nintendo and one of my personal favorites. It suffered from the same fate Final Fantasy IV had, considering this was Final Fantasy VI, but since we didn't get the 5th one, again it had to be changed now to 3. But 3, 6 or whatever, it's a masterpiece. Soundtrack, gameplay, story, battle system, all this back in mid-90s was just beyond excellent. The characters were also very likable and they all had their legendary moments that were engraved inside our hearts. Even if the development was very bland, but despite that, it's still the best RPG for this console in my opinion, and again an all-time classic that was ported to the PS1 and the Game Boy Advance. It's starting to get overrated, I believe, but I don't care. I still love it and will keep recommending it to the rest of the world. Yeah guys, no Breath of Fire 2, no Lufia 1, because even though they're good games, they are, actually, I hate them. Wanna know why? I'm gonna leave a video at the end in which I explain why I hate those two games, so I'm sorry if I didn't include them on this list. Remember, it's my list, it's my personal opinion, and I encourage you to share yours on the comment section below, including your opinion on this video. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!